Hey, what's up, guys? It's State of Soccer TV, and today we're going to continue the World Cup previews. If you caught my last episode on Qatar, that was the very first one. We have now 31 weeks until the World Cup, until the November World Cup in Qatar, and every single week we're going to be profiling a national team leading up to this 2022 FIFA World Cup. And today I have a very special guest. His name is Josh from FMFO. Josh, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you, sir. Very good. And thank you for having me on.
Of course, Josh. Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. And I'm excited because we were talking about the English national team today, but I will say that you are Welsh. So you're located in Wales now, right? You want to talk a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a hybrid mix. So I'm Welsh. I was born and bred in South Wales. I did live in England for half a decade, just over, where I met my wife. So I need to be a little bit kind to England because all my in-laws are over there. My daughter's actually English. But then we moved back to Wales so I could have my son in England. So we have an interesting split in any of the Euros, World Cup games. I have like all of my family have all got the kids Welsh kits. All of her family have got their kids English kits. So we've got a bit of everything going on. I mean, I create content though. I create content on YouTube. I have my own channel, which is FMFO, but I also work for FM Base, which is probably one of the biggest football manager websites where they do things like tactics. They look at Wonder Kids. So I produce content for them as well, and I do my own podcast. So I'm involved. It feels like my life is permanently talking about creating content around doing something around football of some descript.
Yeah, that's awesome. When I came across your content, I thought it was tremendous. So, guys, I'll link Josh's information in the description below. Make sure to check it out. But Josh, today, you're familiar with Football Manager. You're familiar with tactics. We're going to talk about the English national team. I want to hear more about them. For any listeners who are unfamiliar with the Three Lions, what can we expect in Group B? That's my first question is really what are the expectations for England going into Group B coming up in the World Cup?
Well, I mean, the expectations is that they destroy everybody in the group. Whether that's rightly or wrongly. I mean, in theory, they should do. I mean, I think Iran came through, I believe, one of the Asia qualifying groups, which they topped. But there wasn't. I think Iraq was the only other team of sort of any descript in there. I believe it was Hong Kong was the other team, and another one that I can't quite remember. So they weren't like a big, difficult footballing group. You've got Scotland and the Ukraine, and the winner of that will then play Wales. To be honest with you, I think if you were to go back in time, Ukraine had a much stronger squad. But now, Ukraine, Scotland, Wales, they're all very much of a muchness, as much as it hurts me as a Welshman to say that. They were much of a muchness in regards to the quality. Scotland have got a handful of good players. Che Adams up front, Kieran Tierney and Andrew Robertson's probably the best left back in the world at the moment, playing for the best team in the world in Liverpool as well. He's a very lucky boy.
We're pretty biased over here, but
yeah. So they've got John McGinn, Grant Hanley. They've got some solid players. I mean, in Wales we've got obviously we've got Gareth Bale, who gets treated appallingly by the Spanish media, but he's a very, very fine footballer. And he works really hard. And I mean, I'll go into a bit more detail in Wales in a little bit. We'll touch on the expectations of England first. But again, those teams are much of a muchness. The USA, I'll be honest with you, it is USA's the next team. I've not got myself confused. You are in the same group.
We are. And that's what I want to make it clear, because I know a lot of my subscribers and listeners are going to want me to talk about the US, but this is an English national team episode. But yeah, the fact that you didn't, I feel like everyone's kind of overlooking the US in a way.
I'm sure you will. Yeah, and that's because there were a period of time where expectations of USA were quite high. There's some good young players, and my understanding is that football in America is really starting to build a little bit of momentum at the moment, and there's a lot of investment in growing and developing players. I'll be honest with you, I think you're handicapped by the MLS, by the league structure. I think the fact that there's no relegation and no promotion, you remove the competitiveness, and you're not allowing the best players to play against each other and create that competition and that level of development, because that's where progression comes from, testing yourself against the best. And I think that handicaps you a little bit.
I will say right now, the majority of the players on the U.S. starting 11 are in Europe, though. So they had six of the, if offhand correctly, I think 6 of the 11 starters from the Champions League. So they have a good team.
Good players, yeah. I mean, off the top of my head, I can remember Giovanni Reina, Christian Pulisic. Those are the ones that stand out to me.
Weston McKennie is on the team. Serginho Dest, Anthony Robinson. Is at Fulham, left back.
Yeah. Josh Sargent in the squad?
Josh Sargent's in the squad. He hasn't been in the squad, though. I mean, because he hasn't really been playing too well for Norwich outside of that brace.
No one has, though.
Yeah. So, right. We won't talk about the U.S. So hopefully, that if you guys are interested in that, that's coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll do that episode. And then,
and I think we don't know what to expect from America, because you've gone from playing quite well to then not doing as well in a couple of recent games.
That's true.
And I think there is still a perception in England that football in America isn't as big. I mean, because of my heavy involvement in football and the number of people that I speak to. I mean, I work at FM Base with another American. And so because I have those conversations, that's why I've got a little bit more knowledge, not a huge amount, but just a touch more. But generally in the UK, there is not a huge amount of knowledge about American football. And we only see like the one name. We'll see one guy here and one guy there. So it diminishes what our expectation of what the USA are. Because if you saw all the headlines, the minute the group was out, all the English press were like, "We're done, through, no dramas." Let's bring on the next rounds, because who's going to compete with us there?
But they had that headline in 2010 though. I remember it was the Daily Mirror. I want to say it said easy, and it was England, Algeria, Slovenia, and then I don't know how they spelled. They did something with the Y, the Yanks. It said Yanks, and then. Obviously, the U.S. topped the group back in 2010. Yeah, so
that's always exactly. And there is a huge. There's an arrogance that England are going to perform well all the time, and there is a little bit of basis in truth in that they should do. They should perform well.
They should.
But what well is, I think that's subjective. And it's how that's managed. But yeah, I would say the expectations is they should walk it and smash everybody comprehensively. And, whoever qualifies out of Ukraine, Scotland and Wales should be a complete irrelevance to the English, to the England team, because there's no one there to challenge them. I mean, what I would say, what England doesn't really have, but other teams have, is if you look at Wales and Scotland especially, I mean, I can speak from that experience, because obviously being Welsh myself and having close connotations with Scotland, there's a spirit there that is special. It's really, really special. I mean, speaking particularly in the Welsh squad, we are frequently playing beyond the sum of our parts. I mean, we have some good players in Gareth Bale, Aaron Ramsey. I think Harry Wilson's a young winger, Dan James, Ethan Ampadu. There's a handful of players that there's one or two stars and then a handful of okay players, but there's such a spirit. Everyone wants to play for each other. There's no divide.
They're a team. They're an actual team. Not individuals.
Yeah, and we want all of us collectively to play well, and that the fan base, we're never split and ever. I mean, it might sound conceited, but I've never seen it, even in Welsh rugby or football or soccer, whatever you prefer. There's never been that divide. We're always united with the team, and you don't have that negativity. There isn't that there, because we've not had that level of expectation that England has. We're happy with however we perform, because we're just proud to be there. We want to be there, showing people the fact. I mean, we've got, I think if you look at England, the population of Birmingham and London, those two cities, is bigger than the population of the whole of Wales.
Sure.
So we have that underdog status. The same as Scotland. I mean, I think, again, 2 or 3 cities in England.
What's interesting, Josh, is that I think that every other team in this group has that underdog status. Even the US, a massive country, we have that underdog status. Now, cohesively, though, I will say that I saw Wales, especially the last match they played. I forget where Gareth Bale hit that free kick
Austria.
from the right side of the box. The way
superb.
and the post-match interview with Ramsey and Gareth Bale, and how he kind of alluded to the Spanish media treated him incorrectly, and the fans had his back, and that was awesome to see. That's, it is like cohesion to the max, right? The US right now, the team, they're a group of players who like each other, but I don't necessarily know if they know how to play with each other because they've been injured so often. Wales, on the other hand, Gareth Bale has had his injuries, but it seems like despite all that, they have that level of cohesion on the field.
Yeah. And he goes. I mean, Gareth Bale is there, even if he's not playing. And the Spanish media get on his back about that. He's injured, but he's going to Wales because he's there. He's not playing or training. He's just one of the team, because we are a team with a cohesive unit. And if one isn't there, we're backing the other one to go up. And I think that's where the England squad struggle, because I think it's the level of expectation is so high. It's almost like they want it's like the media wants them to fail, and each player they want to prove themselves and establish themselves.
Do you now? I want to get back to England, but does the Welsh media by any means treat their players like this or not?
Oh God, no! You're a god. If you do anything in Wales, not even football, you could be a swimmer, a gymnast. You could have a farm with the most cattle produced, the most attractive cow. You're a hero. Anyone that achieves anything in Wales, you just get back. There isn't that negativity, and it is everybody. And I think it's because we're small and condensed, and it's not just the underdogs geographically. And Wales might look like this big, but the population of Wales live in this little bit.
Sure. The south,
there,
right?
So then you've got all of this in the middle, it's just mountain, and then you've got a little bit in the north. So we're all quite condensed, and we've all just, everyone backs everybody, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's in sport or in life in general, there's that backing, and you don't get the grief and aggravation that they do in the English media.
So it's a little bit of an arrogance, you would say, amongst the media in England. And would you say amongst the players, like let's talk about the lineup that they could possibly roll out? They're starting 11. Who really impresses you? Who doesn't? What do you think Gareth Southgate will do typically, tactically?
On Gareth Southgate, I think he's a really poor manager. I really don't rate him at all. I think his managerial career is relegation with Middlesbrough, and that is about it. And then he performed well with some of the lower English groups. He's somebody that's been put in place because the English FA, and there is an arrogance in the English FA, and a perception of how they wanted to be perceived. And they tried out. I mean, and I haven't got to a degree, I haven't got an issue with them using managers that aren't from that country to manage your national team. I haven't really got. I understand you want to have the best of your country versus the best of your country, and in the purest sense, I understand that. However, you're stifling progression because you're going to be missing out. And what England have done is they've appointed somebody that fits their mold of how they want the team to be presented. Sure. So you need a good man manager, I think, at national team level because you don't play together often enough. So you need somebody who knows how to deal with the players and how to get the best out of them, how to coax performances out. And I think Gareth Southgate has that. I think he knows how to deal with the players. But what he doesn't have is the tactical nous then to go alongside it. So here's Roberto Mancini at Italy, has gone on this unbelievable streak of performing well with players that's not their best Italy squad you've ever seen by any stretch. But they're all playing for each other, and you can watch them. It's a good cohesion. So he knows how to deal with men and man management. I mean, if you recall Mario Balotelli when he was at Man City, they nearly come to fisticuffs. But he would say, he knew how to deal with me because he knows how to deal with people. But then he backs it up with that tactical nous. And I think that's where Gareth Southgate fell apart in the Euro finals against Italy. Was it Italy? I think it was against Italy.
It was Italy in that final, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't know what to do. He picked a formation, and when it wasn't working, he had no idea where else to go and didn't make changes until like the 80th minute. And because he doesn't know. He doesn't know what to do, and he become exposed then. And I think he's the biggest weak point. And
I remember it was strange too in the penalty shootout round. Who was taking the penalties? How specific players were stepping up? And it seemed like there was really no leadership from above, like top down. It kind of looked like the players were left to their own, defense.
He's one of the boys. He's one of the guys. I'm one of you. It's a bit like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United.
You think he's a yes man in a way. He's just kind of he's there. He's there to not stir the pot. The one thing the English team doesn't want to do. They have the talent. They have all the talent in the world. Is to stir the pot and just to he needs to create that cohesion, right?
Yeah, and I think, because then with the players, a big issue that you've got, and in football in general, this is my little football in general rant is, it is an immoral amount of money footballers are paid. It's wrong. It's just wrong. It's not right. I totally disagree with how much money footballers are paid. It makes me sick to my stomach, especially at the time where the world is struggling and people are throwing finances. Erling Haaland might go to Man City for 500 grand a week. It's just mental. But the English team, most of the players play for the big teams because Southgate, although he did originally start picking on form, he seems to have slipped into the sort of Steve McLaren sort of mold of picking players that he likes. I'll pick Harry Maguire every week because he performs for me, despite the fact that he's playing appallingly for Manchester United.
Yeah.
He's in this. You've got a lot of players from the big teams like Harry Maguire, Raheem Sterling, Jack Grealish, Harry Kane, Mason. All of these guys are amazingly wealthy guys. So they've not got anything to prove from that aspect. They've achieved what they need for financial security. And then it's trying to then develop that pride in their national team. And it's always a little bit like it's just not quite there. And that cohesion just isn't quite right because it's so... I think it's so competitive and intense in the Premier League that trying to come together, they can get them to come along as friends, but then to try and play together cohesively, it's just not quite right.
It's not. I don't think it's what it used to be, though. You think about, you watch like Gary Neville's, YouTube channel where it's I think what's it called? Something box, Soccer Box with Gary Neville. He's walking around talking with guys like Roy Keane, obviously who played for Ireland, but talking about the competitiveness, and he's a little bit over the top. But you have these guys talking about the late '90s, 2000s, in the '90s.
Oh, the way it was horrendous then. Yeah, they would have cliques, like Liverpool table, Manchester United table. And that doesn't exist now. And that's something that you can
stifle. Is that one of the main reasons that England hasn't won a World Cup since 1960?
I think it would have done massively because they didn't like each other. The Arsenal players didn't like Manchester United, who didn't like Liverpool, who didn't, and there was an actual dislike for each other. And then when you put that up against, the Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, Paul Scholes, three of the best midfielders in the world at that time, not the best, before anyone starts saying English bias, they weren't the best, but three of the best of that era. And they couldn't play together. And it's not that they couldn't, is that it was almost like they both played the same position for their teams, and it was almost like somebody was having to sacrifice something for the other person, and there was like a little bit of resentfulness in that, and you could see there wasn't that cohesion and that mesh together. And I do think there was elements of that. I think in Euro 96, and if you look at the times when England have performed well, there has been better team cohesion because I think they had a fabulous team then. And there's players like Gaza held that team sort of together through being a lunatic and, and antics that was unfortunately nearly cost him his life on multiple occasions. But it created that unity. And that's when they have performed well. Where they haven't had that unity together, where we've had Sven-Göran Eriksson or Capello, where these guys have sort of tried to keep it professional and not really allowed the players to integrate in the same way, have been quite strict and rigid. It's not performed well because you haven't allowed the guys to play together. And I think national football is massively about personality and playing well together, because you can only play as well as you can play individually, but when you're playing well for each other and for your country, it makes it better. And it's not just now. I think that cohesion is better now. I do think the players, I would struggle to be motivated by Gareth Southgate if I was. Raheem Sterling, for example, he's been to the Champions League semi-final. He's been to the latest periods. He's won the league. He's done stuff that Gareth Southgate could only dream of doing. And I can see why you would struggle as a person to want to take instruction from that guy. But then as a coach as well, the fact that, because Jose Mourinho doesn't have that, he doesn't have a playing background, neither does Jurgen Klopp, but they've got background of, this is what my performance has been, this is what we've done. So then you give them that respect because they've got that that backing of how they perform. And Southgate's not got that, and I do think there'll be an arrogance of the players because they're paid so much, they're so entitled, and they are performing in excess of what he's ever done. I think, you know, it's visible sometimes in games. You can see that they're looking to him. He doesn't know what to do, and then they're just doing their own thing. You know,
they're looking to him. He doesn't know what to do. Who is the English captain? Who really steps up? And that's my other thing: is do they have a true captain on this team?
Well, that's for me.
Is that overlooked? Is that like maybe I'm wrong? What do you think?
I think a captain in a national team is vital. Because again, you need that cohesion and someone to pivot everything. And on the pitch, I can't remember who it is. It was a manager that says, you know, I can only instruct them from the side. When they're on the pitch, they're doing what's on the pitch. And it's important to have that. And I do think, I mean, in Liverpool, it's had Steven Gerrard historically. Chelsea had either Frank Lampard or John Terry. And they're in positions in the squad where they're central to every movement. So, I mean, I'm a big advocate of, you can't have a goalkeeper really as your captain, I don't think. And I don't think you should have your striker, because they are two people that are involved at the start or the end. You need someone who's in communication throughout the whole of the movement and the process of the game. And England don't really have that. I mean, you have Harry Maguire as captain at Manchester United, and he does a appallingly. He's dreadful at the moment. And Harry Kane, I think...
They ask too much. They ask too much of him. Yeah. Harry Kane's always in the spotlight. It's Harry Kane this, Harry Kane that. He's a great striker.
But he's not achieved. That's the problem. He doesn't know what it's like to win trophies or to win titles. He's never done it. He's got no idea of what it's like to be a winner. They need to have somebody in that team. I mean, I would have Jordan Henderson, and again, that's not my Liverpool biased. He's won the Champions League. He's won the Premier League. He's won the Carabao Cup. He could be captain of a quadruple winning team. Touch wood, this year. So he's got that experience. So he knows in certain games, in pressure moments, this is what we need to do. And he's in the center of the pitch, and you need that person in the center, I think, to direct traffic. And I think, although they'll say, oh, you know, he does do that and he is the vice captain, the way that Gareth Southgate sort of treats and the way that the team sort of pushed Harry Kane forward, he's not the right person. I think that could be, again, another issue that they have, because he's the captain. He's not quite sure what to do. Then people start looking elsewhere, and then there's sorts of spread out there, and that's when you start losing. Because who do you look at? Because, you know, Henderson, he doesn't always pick Henderson for reasons I can't comprehend. So if Henderson's not there, or if he is there, is Henderson then? He may start then saying things that could potentially contradict what Harry Kane is saying, and then how does that work? And you know, I do think the leadership, and it's a young team. I think if I'm just looking at the ages, I've got the screen over here. Henderson's 31. The rest of the players, I mean, 27 and under, the bulk of them, and that's good. That's
good news for this English national team. But is Southgate the right manager for them right now? I will say he did take them to the final of the Euros. And
did you see the teams they had to play though? It wasn't a difficult. And I think it was the Euros before that, the World Cup before that, we got to a stage, and every time 18. England played a decent team, they lost.
Who knocked him out? Was it Croatia knocked him out in 18, I think?
I believe so. I think it's Belgium and another team that has knocked them out at the various stages. Yeah. And I think in the one tournament, they played Belgium twice, and Belgium beat them twice. And then the rest of the time, it was quite an easy run, and that's my concern, because already, I mean, if I go into some of, if I click on here, there's English media, they're on about England's route to the final. We should be able to do this. We can get past this. We can get past these, you know, predicting where we should get already. I think based on what, I'm not entirely sure. But it's, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, what was you going to say?
I was going to say the World Cup's a crapshoot too, right? It's a knockout tournament. You have the group stages, of course. Who's going to top it, first or second? Outside of that, it's a knockout tournament.
Yeah,
it's just it really rewards consistency, and I don't think this English team is consistent day in and day out, match in and match out. So, and it's all obviously the form. Now, that's another thing, is who's in form versus who's being picked because they're at a big club too.
Yeah. And the thing is a lot of the big players, and this is a legitimate issue, and I will grant the media this complaint, is the English football. There's a lot of football played. The amount of games is tremendous that is being played, and especially because of COVID now knocking everything back, that there's been very little break in between play, and all these competitions that are being squeezed in here, there, and everywhere. So the amount of games, I mean, quite often, just in the Premier League alone, there's 38 games. If you get a decent run in a cup, chuck another sort of 5 on top of that. If there's 2 cups, we're one of the only, I think we're the only top league in the world that has 2 national cups. So you're chucking another little run on that. That's another sort of 2, 3 at least for these players who are playing for the bigger teams. That's at least 4. So you're already up to like 45 games. You throw in European competition as well, like the Champions League or the Europa League. You throw in at least a bare minimum of another 6 on top of that. So you're kicking them at least 50 games that these guys could have played throughout consistently. And then because of where the World Cup is this year, there's this mini break in the summer, then bang, straight into another season.
Right into the season.
Yeah, so there's a huge amount of fatigue that you have there, and that's held them back before. We're trying to rush players back like David Beckham and Wayne Rooney, trying to bring everyone back beforehand. And Harry Kane is an accident waiting to happen, injury-wise, and he doesn't normally score for the first couple of months of the season either.
Yeah. What's the England-Welsh rivalry like or lack thereof? We know the Scottish-English rivalry.
To be fair, it's the Scottish-English rivalry is fierce and nasty, I think, because there is politically, you're at the point where the United Kingdom, as it were, so you've got Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. Scotland are consistently, their lead political party consistently talking about that breaking away. They don't want to be part of the United Kingdom. They want to be independent. So you've not just got that divide of where they're a different country, if you like, anyway. There's also that divide of the gross spend per capita of Scotland is higher than it is in England. So the bulk of the money is generated in England, but the most of it is spent in Scotland. Out of England, Scotland, and Wales, most of it goes into Scotland. So English have got this thing about the Scots, the ungrateful Scots. They got all of this benefit from being part of us, and and so there is this fierceness between them anyway as countries. And then you throw a sporting element into it. The fact that Scotland is such an underdog, and in the UK, Scotland and Wales, you see England, and they perceive themselves as this big, massive, special country that we're here, we exist in the ethos, and we're sort of like a fly, not even a fly in the ointment sort of thing. So if Scotland win, oh my God, it's amazing. It's like the greatest thing in their lives. If they drew 1-1, I think, in one game not that long ago, and the celebrations in Scotland were immense.
I can't tell if the English fans in the comments are going to come at you or they're going to agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Because I think, and I mean, on that, I don't think it's anything to do with I think the English media stoke up a lot of it. I mean, there are pockets of people in England that do generally think this. I mean, I'm basing this from people that I know have said, if Scotland don't want to be part of the UK, don't want to be part of the UK. So there is that rivalry there, and so in the teams it is. With Wales, it's slightly different because, I mean, if you go to Scotland, do you want to be independent? Yes, we do. If you come to Wales, do you want to be independent from England? Well, we don't care. It's because it's fine. We're happy to be part of the United Kingdom. We benefit from it. There's no advantage of being alone. I do not know. Well, again, I'm telling a lie. I know one person out of everyone that I know in Wales, and I've lived here nearly all of my life. I've got lots of family, and I travel all across Wales. I've met one person that wants to be separate from England. So, but we've got that little bit like little sibling rivalry.
Sure.
Whereas England and Scotland have a dislike rivalry, Wales and England like a little sibling rivalry.
It's almost like the brothers who are 1 year apart or 2 years apart, and then the parents decide to have a kid 7 years later, and it's just kind of like he's just there. No offense.
Yeah. No, that's what it is. We want to win. Don't get me wrong. We want to win. We beat you, and if we beat you, we're going to gloat like no one's business. But it's not nasty or aggressive. We're not going to be verbally abusive. If it's great debate. It's more like, just jives and little jabs. If England beat us, then it's, it was going to happen anyway. The fact, it's an inevitability almost. So we're happy to. And if Wales don't, if we don't beat either Scotland or Ukraine, whoever wins that game, and one of the other teams go out, the likelihood is the majority of Wales are behind England in the games. I mean, it's one of those we don't.
That's
there are
interesting.
Some,
would
yeah,
they cheer,
there are some
would they cheer for Scotland or Wales? Or Scotland or England, Wales?
To be fair, both. I don't think we
or
would.
Ukraine.
We wouldn't be.
Or would they, with everything going on in the world, would they?
To be fair, I don't think if we don't get through, we'll be devastated because this will be Gareth Bale's last real big competition, and the service that he's given to the country, he deserves. We deserve to get him there. He deserves for us to get him there because what he's done has been absolutely immense, and we'd love it to happen. If we don't get there, to be fair, it'd be when an England game is on. The likelihood is, I would say, a good 70% of Wales will be supporting England to do well. Okay. And then the rest will be apathetic to it. When there's not a game on, we don't really care. Whereas in England, obviously, when they're in it, whether they're playing the game or not, when the competition is on, football fans are on. They're supporting the team and they're backing it. And the one thing I will say with the English fans, they passionately support. People express it in different ways, but they support it. Some people are passionate and strong. Some people are aggressive with their support of the team. Some people are like the support in their team and congratulations to the other teams, but we want us to win. And some people are like passionate supporting the team. Balls to you, we don't want you to win. But no matter which side of the fence they're on, they do have that. And I think whereas Wales were probably back England in games, they're playing. There's very few Welsh really. If they'll say it. I mean, I'll say it to my wife, sometimes I might say, I hope England lose today. I don't mean it really, because it's quite nice the way, but like I said, it is like a little sibling rivalry, like, oh, you're going to lose today. You're not going to do very well.
Yeah, well, you guys are united. You're united with, it's it's Great Britain. So that's the other thing it's so strange to me.
It is. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself Welsh or British? I would assume Welsh.
Yeah, I do. I think myself as Welsh. My wife thinks herself as English. But if someone refers to me as British, I don't really take offense at it because Wales is technically a principality. We're not even a country. We're a principality technically. It's a strange dynamic because again in Scotland, a lot of my friends that I have in Scotland are fiercely proud of being Scottish, and they are Scottish first and foremost, and then they might be British, and they're certainly not English.
So what does that make Americans? What does that make the United States? Like if we...
do you know what? I think everyone's quite apathetic towards America. I mean, in the nicest way possible. We think you're a basket case of a country, but you're so big. I think. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have studied politics. I'm actually a Bachelor of Arts in politics. So I understand the political structure over in America is, even though there's only two parties, is complex, and you've got such a big, vast area with so many different people from so many different areas. I mean, it's not even like Wales and France sort of distance. It can be like Wales and China, a distance almost, not quite, but almost,
I try to tell people that. They say, oh, I hate the United States or this specific place. That, well, have you ever been to San Diego or Seattle or Houston? Or there's just so much. It's such a big country. You can't really. What I was really getting at was the relationship between, the UK and the United States, or what, it's just.
It is a funny one. I mean, from a sporting point of view, I think in the nicest way possible, it's just an apathy. I don't think we'd be fussed if because America, they just in the nicest way possible, it's just not seen as a competitive team that we need to worry about.
Even if you're Wales,
do you know what? If I was Wales, I'd give us. I would say, do you know? In all honesty, because I haven't thought about it. If Wales got through, I would say, can we beat Iran? Definitely we can beat Iran. Could we get a draw against England? We could get a draw against England. If we're on our game, we could sneak a win, but the likelihood is we would get a draw if we're lucky. Against America, I think we could win.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I genuinely, I think I do. I don't know whether that's based in fact or just my own passion. I would say the perception is Welsh fans would think if we could get into this group, we could pick up 4 points, certainly.
But that's setting up nicely for the United States, though. Yeah. I think they're getting overlooked. I
hadn't thought about it in that much depth about sort of expectations of.
The quality of a Serginho Dest, Weston McKennie, a Christian Pulisic, a Giovanni Reina. Those 4 guys alone. Obviously, you have Gareth Bale, who's a massive superstar, and Ramsey, he's a great player. He's been prolific with Rangers, and he's fit if he's fit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could also rattle off a couple other names that I don't know if you've heard of Brendan Aronson, who's American.
Yeah.
Who plays, Tyler Adams.
I didn't know he's American.
That's the thing is I think no one ever realizes they're American. It's like Tyler Adams plays for Salzburg. He's a central defensive midfielder. He's American. Now we had Zach Steffen make all those errors and the blunders for Man City. He's American. So they do have a good team.
Yeah, it is interesting because, like I said, I would say if you're going to ask England how many points you're going to finish with, they would say I think they would comfortably say they should beat everybody.
Okay,
they might
should be able
they might accept dropping 2 points tops in that group. I would say if Scotland got through, I would say Scotland's expectations of themselves is not massive. I'm not speaking for Scottish people because I don't know that much. But I would say, based on the conversation I have, them being there, that's great. Thanks a lot. They sort of take that. And Wales, if we got into the group, I would comfortably say 4 points we should be expecting as a minimum, if not 6 or 7. I would say the expectation of Wales is that we could finish potentially either if around the same place as the US, there would be a point between us, because I would say you probably as a squad got better players than us as an entirety. I would say our cohesion is better than anyone else's in the group, and that cohesion and team spirit could carry us through. I would say,
the US is a squad that, now this is the past. We're talking about the past. But from 2002 to the 2014 World Cup, they qualified for everyone and advanced out of group stage of every single one of those World Cups.
Yeah.
So from an American perspective, as far as the group concerned, I think oddly enough, we were so excited when we drew England, because that's the number. If there was any team the US wanted to play out of all of the top teams, it's England. It's England, and that's a team that everyone believes they could get a point off of. The U.S. believes. Outside of that, Iran kind of scares me because I don't know what to expect with them. I really just don't know. I don't. And they're also playing in Qatar, like they're playing their neighbor. They're. I don't know what to expect from Iran. And I'm talking to an Iranian on Friday. Actually, he's coming on, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Because it would be interesting to see what their expectations are. Because I don't think I would imagine all of the other teams, when Iran was picked, were like, "Thank God for that." That's
I was at first. That's what I thought at first. I was like, "Thank God," but then I really started looking at it, and I was like, "They've qualified for multiple World Cups in a row and just barely missed the round of 16, the last World Cup."
Yeah, and it's. I mean, the qualification groups are difficult to measure because I think they're in the sort of Asian Pacific qualification groups, which they're not. There's some easy games in there. Don't get me wrong. There's some tough ones, but you can get a really good group in that. And like I said, they had Iraq in their group, I believe, and I'm not sure who else. I think I did have it up here at one stage.
Yeah, they're the Asia. Japan was able to advance. South Korea advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be interesting. But I would wager the thing is though with and although I've down-talked England a lot in regards to, there is a sort of a lack of cohesion and awareness, and their manager will let them down. If anything's going to let them down, it's going to be Southgate. But when they click, God, there's fire. There's fire in that team. I mean, you got Raheem Sterling. As much as I hate him for leaving Liverpool, and I don't hate him. I'm really upset that he left Liverpool, especially the way that it all happened. But he is fire. He is so fast, and he's great. Mason Mount, I think he looks like a rodent. His face just weirds me out. But he's a fabulous player. You've got Jordan Henderson, who's just he's a piston. He just keeps chugging away and he ticks over, makes things happen. And obviously Harry Kane, Phil Foden, Luke Shaw's been okay, but I think
Alexander-Arnold. Yeah.
Well, do you know what? If he doesn't play him, Gareth Southgate's got this thing about playing him, and that's where I said, we let him. But if all the England team click, and Southgate picks a team that he should be picking on form, they're dangerous, and they could easily get to the semi-finals. I would say, quite easily.
I think that England. I was saying earlier that I was ecstatic when we drew England. That's also partially because it's kind of that brother rivalry, I would say, from across the pond. That we'll say we're cousins, right? Cousin rivalry, if you want to call it that, or whatever it is. It was hundreds of years ago, but it's still this identity, and I think the American Federation, the U.S. Soccer Federation, puts so much stock in the way the FA runs things and the way that things are done over in England. In fact, the majority of fans follow the Premier League first in the U.S. and then probably not even MLS, but they wake up on Saturdays or Sundays and watch the Premier League. So all these players grew up doing the same thing, right? Yeah. It's interesting. So this is a big draw for the United States. It's the relationship is kind of it's going to be the dynamic of Group B. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
That's it's good. I mean, this could be, in all seriousness, I think, and I'm going to sound like the English media. This is as good an opportunity that England are going to have that they've had for a long time. I think the path that they've got, I believe, from what I've looked at, the quarterfinals, they could potentially come up against France. That's one of the trickier teams, but they could quite easily beat them. They could quite easily be battered by them because Kylian Mbappe is an absolute monster. But they could get there, because although there are some solid players, I wouldn't say there's a world star. I can't think of a world star. Harry Kane is probably one of the best finishers in the world. Again, he's not the best, but he's definitely one of the best finishers. And if used right, one of the best complete strikers in the world. Again, Raheem Sterling is pretty unique, I would say. But then you've got players like Jack Grealish is okay, but I wouldn't say you've got like stars with someone you like. When England had Gaza, Rooney, Beckham, stars. There's none of them, so they're quite a solid unit. And I think that could, if there's that solid unit with a little bit of flair and a little bit of magic off Ramsey, off Sterling, off Kane, off Phil Foden, off those players that have got it in their bag, that's what you need in these knockout competitions. You need to be solid, you need to be tight and compact, which England showed that they could do in the Euros, which surprised the hell out of me, because they've got some defenders on dreadful form. But because they can be solid and they can be compact and go forward, if they're able to play and chuck that bit of flair in, there's no reason why they can't do it.
I watched I saw Saka play this past weekend, actually, Southampton. I was very impressed by him. His movement off the ball.
Who was that?
Saka.
Oh, Bakary Saka.
Yeah. So, I mean, seeing him up and close, he was the best player on the field for Arsenal this past weekend.
He was superb in the Euros as well. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, he didn't deserve the grief he got for his penalty miss, incidentally, because at least he was on target. And like when Marcus Rashford's, which just blew my mind, hit a ball on target. It just,
that was bad.
But they have there's some good players in there that can do something, and if
their goalie situation though, like Pickford, that's the thing I laugh at the 2010 World Cup when Rob Green duffed that ball off with Dempsey. I don't know if that was in that. I'm looking at Pickford, and he's a Merseyside guy. He's with Everton, of course. Yeah. And, but at the same time, like, is he really their best? Is he really? That's really who England.
I don't think he's the best English keeper. I think Aaron Ramsdale, is a better keeper.
Yeah.
There was, Jack Butland at, I don't even know where he is now. I think he was at Stoke, I want to say, for a period of time, missed his chance to leave and really develop.
Yeah.
Pickford's a weird one. He does pretty well at England.
Yeah, he does play well.
Which is strange, because at Everton he's a basket case. The guy's a lunatic, and
that could happen. It's a World Cup,
And that's the unnerving thing. You've got Fraser Forster and Nick Pope, who are not like as big names. They don't play.
I love Fraser Forster. I love Fraser Forster. Yeah,
and they've been solid. They've not had mistakes that you've seen in them. They've not done the spectacular. And Pickford confuses me because he does play well for England, but if he has a bit of Everton form sneak into him, that would just scare me. And I think if he has a funny 5 minutes as he has done at Everton, you've then got Harry Maguire. If Harry Maguire doesn't sort his form out and he's going to England, playing the way he does for United, that is scary. Because are you going to want him passing back to Jordan Pickford or Marshall in your defensive line? And Luke Shaw, who played well at the Euros, how he did it was just superb. And you can only credit Southgate and himself and Luke himself for that. But his form at United's been appalling. And if you've got those two there, that's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But like I said, but there's that potential. I mean, they've got Ben White if they bring him in. I think that back line is the weakest part. That back five or four, whatever formation he determines to play.
There's holes with their team. It's just, I don't think Group B really has enough talent to exploit those holes until later on, right? So I do expect them to get through. I do expect them to top the group. It's just how far can they go? And you said that quarterfinal, that run up to there, they would essentially come against France. That's if they finish first in the group, if they top the group, right?
Yeah. I think they could do that.
Yeah.
I think a game against France would be interesting because
France can be basket case too.
Yeah. I mean, if they have all their players play well, then that would terrify me. But they just don't seem to be able to do that.
They have Benzema now. They have Benzema back, who wasn't even with France in 2018.
I mean, Antoine Griezmann, Mbappe, and Benzema, that is a trident that will just terrify me. And I know there's a lot of better players. I mean, N'Golo Kante is a monster in midfield, and Pogba always seems to want to play for France. He's a bit like United's Gareth Bale. France's Gareth Bale. He just plays for France, and they got good keepers. They're a good team, but I don't know what goes on with France. It never happens, does it? Like there's always something that goes on there.
Well, they did. I mean, they won the last World Cup, but prior to that, they just when you think back to like 2006, or whenever the Nicholas Anelka thing happened,
that was weird. Yeah,
that was weird too. That was very weird. Yeah,
and So I think. I mean, there's some. I think England they should do the group. If England don't win the group, something's happened. And that would surprise me. I would wager they'll comfortably get to the quarters, and they should be in the semi-finals, really. And then once you get the semi-finals, anything can happen at that stage.
I'll say one thing because I was looking at Ukraine as far as their national team goes. It's just obviously with everything going on right now, they're going to have to scramble to get back in shape, right? To get fit for the game.
Yeah.
But they do have a crop of solid, Premier League players. Like, I mean, Zinchenko for Man City, who's on and off. He doesn't really play all the time, of course.
Yeah.
Yarmolenko, who's an absolute beast. Like, Yaremchuk. I mean, I think they have, I'm looking at it right now. Pyatov, who plays in Ukraine. They have Ruslan Molinovsky. Well, what I'm getting at is I think they're
solid.
They're solid, but with everything going on, it might be tough. I just think that in a typical, if the world was normal right now, I think Ukraine would actually get through. I do. Through this playoff.
I mean, it is. I mean, I think Ukraine, Scotland, and Wales, I do think they're much of a muchness. I think, and I don't mean this in a nasty way, so Scottish people, please don't be upset with me. I do think Scotland is probably the weaker of those three teams.
I do too. Yeah.
And I just do. I think Wales has just got the spirit and momentum from when Gary Speed was at the manager, and Gary Speed will forever credit with changing Welsh football and the way the national team plays, because the fact that he set something up in his legacy is still now, and that was like nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal. We've seemed to maintain that, and that carries us through. And Ukraine can either, I mean, the plight that they're going through at the moment is either going to just make it just too hard for them to be able to come together as a cohesive unit due to the logistics and what they're going through, or it can be a catalyst to ignite something within them to, that two fingers up at the world, and they're really going to go for it a little bit with Denmark, with Ericsson when he went down.
Yeah,
the fact that drove the team on there, and so it's I do think it's such an interesting group, and the USA they're so overlooked. You're massively overlooked. Really,
well,
really
they are. When I rattle off the players, I saw you were surprised. I will say that this is the most talented group the US has ever had. They haven't really put it together in qualifiers, and their coach is holding them back. Very similar to a Southgate. I do not like their coach. Yeah. So this US team's average age is 24 years old. They're extremely young. Yeah. So we'll see.
You've got a good future. And what I quite like about American football potentially is the finance and resource America has as a country. If you're able to generate and provoke some of that into football, or soccer, I'd rather you call it football though, and just call American football less. Yeah. But if you can do that and create that grassroots, you've got such a catchment. There's a tremendous catchment area, and with the level of investment potentially you can put in to grassroots. And if you use it, I mean, the one thing, the FA does have a good structure for developing young players, and the ideas that they have are right, having playable fields in every area of a certain size. You have a playable field, you have these structures in place. If you chuck that into America, the country that you have, the size that you are, the resource in regards to people and fiscally, if you can develop that, it could be really exciting. 10 years time, because it will take sort of 10 years minimum for this to develop and come all the way through, and you need that buy-in from the people. But you could be something special.
It's interesting. Massively. It's interesting to anyone who's listening in who's unfamiliar with what's going on with like the soccer, we call it the soccer revolution right now in the US. Everyone's saying that this is our golden generation. It is right now, but to be fair, I think that the next one's going to be better, and the next one's going to be better. And I'm only saying that because this is the first crop of players that have all come through MLS academies. All of our teams have academies. Even our second division and third division have academies now. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. I'm a Philadelphia Union supporter, and we started in 2010. That's when our team was created, right? 12 years old. We sold Mark McKenzie to Genk in Belgium, a defender. We sold Brendan Aronson to Salzburg recently, both for, I think it was like $12 million total. Every MLS team has sold a couple players a year for millions. That's starting to happen, and they're Americans too. So it's becoming kind of an Eredivisie type. That's what we're aligning with.
And the way you structure it does help. I mean, having that salary cap, and is it a VIP or MVP rule that you have?
It's actually the designated player rule, which was the David Beckham rule originally, because And
I think although long term it could hinder, but that's long term. In the short term, what you are going to be doing is encouraging piety and it means that you're not going to have one team, your best team, full of superstars, so no one else can get through. So you are going to keep that level playing field. I mean, I think long term, if you really want to go the MLS to become one of the more competitive leagues in the world, it's going to have to be bummed out, because you can't keep that, because you're not going to keep that level of competitiveness and stop drafting players. Just buy a player, and he's your player, and you look after him and you develop him and take him all the way through.
The issue is you have in MLS, we have so many competing sports, right? We have the NFL, it's massive, the NBA, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, and then there's MLS. There's multiple leagues. The thing is, I would love to see promotion relegation in the future, but if one of these large cities teams, like a Boston, their New England Revolution, get relegated, they're going to say, screw the sport of soccer. I'm going to go and just support the Bruins or the Celtics or the Red Sox or the New England Patriots, and I'm going to stop watching soccer because I don't want to watch Division II soccer in the United States. And that's why we don't. That's why we don't have promotion and relegation right now. It's
tricky.
It's hard.
Because I mean, in the England now, and the thing that I think has helped generate all these all the good crop of players coming through is lower league football. The support they've got is immense. It is a little bit of a pushback against the Premier League and the cost of going to support them and everything else. But lower league football is so popular. It's people are going along. I mean, even in Wales, you've got our small teams. The popularity that they generate, and I think social media helps with this a lot, is quite big. And so people are supporting teams. I think there's like 10, 11 tiers of football that we've got over here.
Yeah.
And you've got that support through. I mean, some teams will never reach the pinnacles of where they want to be. And there are some teams that know this is my limit, but they still get thousands and thousands of fans showing up every single week because it's that sense of community. And even if we don't have the same number of sports you guys have.
The one thing I'll say I do love, when I was over there is every club has its own, it feels like a community. It's not a franchise. The difference between American sports and, I would say, whether you're in the Championship or League One, League Two, or Premier League, they really make an effort. At Southampton, when I was there, at the half, I was mesmerized by, they were announcing individuals who passed away the past week or two, and talking about them and kind of saying a couple nice things about them. In the United States, they just take your money, and they don't really, that's not a thing. That's not.
It is a community. And it's one thing. I mean, I'm a massive Liverpool fan. I've been a Liverpool fan since I was 6 years of age. And I'm so proud, even though I don't live in Liverpool, and my association was actually because Ian Rush played for Liverpool. He's a Welsh legend, and that's where it was sort of the tie-in with me. And Jamie Redknapp was really good looking. So that's where that sort of link was. But it's a community, and all the teams, especially through COVID, a lot of the Premier League teams are having food banks themselves, and they pump money into the community. I mean, even Chelsea, the amount of work that they've done in the community is huge. Man City, I'm not a big fan of their takeover and, where the money comes from, and sports washing is just despicable and should be driven out of sport. But they have invested a lot into the community. And from a personal experience, I mean, I had my son's godfather passed away of pancreatic cancer a few years ago. And he was a big Liverpool fan, and his one on his bucket list was he hadn't been to Anfield since the 80s. He wanted to go back to Anfield just to do a tour around the stadium and sort of try and drink it in. So I contacted the club and said, look, this is the situation. He's probably got about 2-3 months left. Sometimes he's in a wheelchair, sometimes he's not, depending how he feels on the day. And at that stage, the stadium was, I think it would either just come into the end of its renovation, the first stage of renovation. And I asked, is it going to be appropriate for him to come? Is he going to be able to get around and get to the stairs? And not only did they say, yeah, no, that's fine. They said, actually, do you want to bring him to a game? We can offer you tickets to a game. And I thought, awesome. So, what game is it? And they were like, well, what game do you want? These are the games that are coming up. Take your pick. Let us know, which game that you want to come to. And they allowed us to have the tickets then to go to a game. We got free parking as well. When we got there, we had people help us through. And I'll get emotional in a minute. So I tend to do that since becoming a dad. I well up a lot. But that was really special. The fact that not only do they want to help you, as in answer your call, answer your questions, let you know what you can and can't do, but they want to help to facilitate you doing more than. And what else can we do to help you? And I will say that a lot. I don't think there's a club in England that doesn't do that. And then there is.
You're right.
There's that real sense of community. I mean, I can be Welsh, and if I go somewhere in England and there's an English group of guys there, but on the whole, you get on fine. You don't get all the hooliganism to an extent that you used to. But if there's a Liverpool group, you're immediately integrated into that, and you're like part of the family immediately. And it is the same with all of the clubs. There is that community there, and the club legitimately. There's some clubs that don't. There are some owners that don't run the clubs specifically well, and unfortunately the Glazers are one of them, mate. Take that whichever you. But we've got FSG at Liverpool, and they do a fabulous job.
Well, they're American, so it's two sides of it. Family Sports Group is the best. They're great. They're amazing. They're really good.
Yeah, I love the way that they run the club, and there's a massive community. And then what is happening more and more is seeping a little bit into the England fans, and when they're supporting England, seems to be a lot more togetherness than it was historically. There's a lot less tribalism, and it's more about supporting England, which is great to see. And I think you just need the media then to stop piping up all these mental expectations, and then the minute it doesn't happen, then just berate the living crap out of somebody for not doing something. There needs to be that. Have high expectations, shoot for the stars. That's great, but accept the fact that you're not omnipotent.
Josh, I mean, it was great talking with you. I think that
I really enjoy it.
Yeah, if you're interested in the English national team, Wales, cultural anthropology, some psychology, history, we covered a lot. Yeah, in an hour and 11 minutes. I'll cut some of it down. Yeah, pretty comprehensive. So it was supposed to just
anything that sounds like I'm abusing England, you can cut that out, because if my friends and wife listen to it, they'll
really could care less personally. I have no ties to England, so besides being a Liverpool supporter and like the sign back here, I mean, this is clearly an American set, so you can see what
I really appreciate you having me on, and in the future, if ever there's any sort of crossover, I'll be more than happy to come back on and chew the fat. It's enjoyable. It's educational.
It was educational is what it was, exactly. So all right, Josh, well, take care, man, and I hope everyone watching this enjoyed. If you're still watching after an hour, good on you. And great. Subscribe, hit the like button, and we will talk soon. I'll see you for the next episode, which will be about Iran, coming out next week. So that'll be a really interesting one. Talk soon.